Yeah. I suppose on that note, how has, as you've progressed, in not only in real practice but in age, as we all have, how what changes and in your body and your practice have you noticed and have you made? Because you do speak a little bit and you have spoken about
Yeah.
perimenopause.
Yes,
Which I
yes.
think
I
is a
feel like
huge. It's a huge subject, which is really, if we've said that, pregnancy and postpartum is neglected. I mean, I think this one is just completely off the radar still, really. Um,
yeah, it is not talked about a lot, that's for
mm, mm,
sure.
mm.
And it's a real thing, people.
I think
It
it's so
exists.
important, and I'm some weird kind of middle-aged man champion for women. It's a kind of weird situation that I put myself in. But I hear so many women, because often the demographic that we're teaching is often the majority might be around this age. So we have so many conversations with women suffering and feeling, well, what's wrong? Like trying to kind of navigate the territory that they don't feel the same, that they ought to feel the
Yeah.
same, like what to do, and there's still a lack of advice in the public sphere, let's say, or sharing even.
Yes, and I
Mm.
think a lot of young, I'm going to say young teachers, regardless of maybe, gender, uh, don't really realize like midlife changes are really real. Like
Yeah, even for a man.
they,
Yeah, yeah,
even for
yeah,
men
yeah.
go through massive like changes.
Mm.
I mean, maybe not as drastic as women,
No.
where you're losing your like reproductive fertility, but they do lose, androgen, they do lose testosterone, they do go through changes. And you know what makes you really strong and gives you a lot of willpower and makes you want to like be perfect and focus on perfectionism? Testosterone. So
Mm.
when your testosterone starts to drop,
That's
you
what's
become a
happened then.
little less interested in.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's real. It's real. It's like it's a physical thing that's happening. And you might think, "Oh, it's never going to happen to me. I'm always going to, I didn't have kids so I could keep my practice. I didn't have, children so I could, or I didn't like, do all these things so that I could keep my life exactly as it is." But you know what? You can't skip biology. It's going to happen. And
Mm.
I think some of the things are like the fatigue for women, like not only are most women in their middle age, like, mothers or like have like family responsibilities. They're caretakers to either children or aging parents. Typically, that falls on women.
Mm, mm, mm.
They're also working a full-time job and getting paid less than their male partners.
Mm, mm.
They're also like doing all the house cleaning and the food preparation for the most part. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe they have a partner or somebody who helps out a little, but it's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility. And
Mm.
then you throw on this sort of like change in your hormones, where your hormones are kind of creating a crazy, sort of chaotic, unpredictable feeling, like a storm. It's quite interesting because you can feel just really tired. It's like there's just so much going on, like internally, that you're, maybe feeling kind of just like lingering there, but also like in your life too. It's a
Mm,
very
mm.
challenging stage of life.
Mm, mm. And
And
emotional kind of
yeah,
symptoms as well. People, I mean, I've heard a lot of women say it makes them feel often anxious, actually depressed, but yeah,
yeah,
kind of like a lot of anxiety coming up, I think.
anxiety, depression. You could be,
Mm,
your cycle could be very regular your whole life, and
mm,
then all of a sudden it's
mm.
like very unpredictable. You know, um, you're getting like these night sweats where you wake up like drenched. You're like, oh, okay, right? That takes a lot of energy. You're sleeping and like burning energy. And then also, like, it can wake you up, right? A lot of women start like waking up every hour, not sleeping properly. So throw on like not sleeping properly, your, body, your hormones, your inner heating system like going haywire. You're, feeling like a little anxious or depressed because of these hormone fluctuations. Just think of like PMS, or even like when you're pregnant, women can feel like really intense emotions. It's kind of like
Mm.
that, right? Big
Right,
ups,
right.
big downs. Um, and then all of a sudden you feel like, oh, and I have to get up and do this practice that's really
Yeah.
physically demanding, right? It's like, okay, well, I think that's the thing to realize is like you don't actually have to do that physically demanding practice. There's ways that you can like cut it back. You can take out
Mm.
jump backs and jump throughs between sides. You can, maybe do the whole practice without vinyasa. It's like there's ways you can adapt and change the
Yeah.
practice that I feel like should really be encouraged, especially, for women who are feeling like, you know what, I'm just too tired to do this. I'm
Can
too like I have too
can you,
much going
yeah.
on. And then you get headaches too. Oh my God, the headaches. Um, but also like maybe adding some of that intermediate series, right? Which is going to help to counter some of the depression or the anxiety and like create more energy. Maybe not kapotasana enough, but like some of those beginning back bends,
Right,
really
right.
helpful for like lifting the energy and like not,
What
you
what
shouldn't
was your
feel
own story
exhausted.
with it? What was your own story with it? I mean, like you came
Yeah.
from doing the advanced series, and then I know that you then did a lot of traveling.
Yes.
For and that was
Also
on
not
top.
great for practice, as
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, exactly. And then on top of going through the
Yeah.
start of this phase, and I think you had some kind of quite a health
Yeah.
crisis, right? And how have you
Yes.
developed your practice now? Like how have you
Yeah.
phased it to a different to
Yeah.
accommodate that?
Yeah, I was having like a lot of inflammation and,
Mm,
injuries. I was getting injured a lot. I had like
right.
also a major shoulder injury. Who knows how that happened? But like just my joints weren't responding well to the intensity of a practice. And I think also that's the other thing, with all the hormone fluctuations and things happening, your joints um, become like a little bit not as strong, right? You start to lose some of that elasticity in your body. Things start to dry out a little bit. Um, so yeah, I kind of changed the way I practiced. I don't really do advanced series so much anymore at this stage of my life. Not that I will never do it again, but it just didn't feel like, doing all these arm balances, well, especially with the shoulder injury, was even possible. So I just was like, okay, it's not happening at this point.
I kind of keep with the original adage from Batabi Joyce when asked about advanced series, what it's for, and say like, it's
Yeah.
for demonstration, like,
Yes.
at a certain point,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yeah,
Yeah, it's the eye
they,
candy
yeah,
that attracts people to the practice.
mm, yeah,
Yeah, but like the primary and intermediate series, I think they're nice. They're therapeutic, especially if you've been,
mm,
if you've been doing them. Maybe when you're learning them, they don't feel so therapeutic.
mm.
But after some time, they're, yoga chikitsa, yoga therapy, and nadi shodhana, this sort of purification or cleansing of the energy body. So, mostly my practice, I do what I really like to do. I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah, go
I
for it. Yeah.
really like to do half primary up to like Navasana and then do like the first half of intermediate. And
Right.
that's my go-to. That's my like, this is gonna feel good. It's gonna open my hips. I'm gonna get all those nice back bends. I can do it in a way that's gentle and doesn't feel like I'm like overexerting myself. And then of course, like, closing sequence or legs up the wall or something.
Mm,
You
mm,
know,
mm.
and for me, I really love the back bends, especially not because they're easy. Everyone's like, they're easy for you. It's like they're not actually easy, especially these
Right.
days
They
where
look easy
everything's
for
like,
you. They do
yeah,
look
thank
easy
you.
for you. Yeah, yeah,
But they're
yeah.
not, especially like when everything's about the computer and you're like so much tension in the shoulders and the back. But I like the back bends because I know they reverse that. And they're painful actually, especially these days, you know. But it's like the medicine I feel like we all need, to be able to like open the chest and open the heart and just like reverse this
Mm, mm.
pattern of like
So,
aging, which is like crumpling us up.
I mean, that's not exactly a traditional approach, and people, many people are, very, very respectful to that tradition now, want to do it right, naturally speaking.
Yes.
And, I mean, this half primary, half intermediate isn't, the so-called traditional method. I mean, what do you say to that, And, because people will always say, well, I haven't got the time to do the whole thing. And, should I keep in sequence, or should I, should I skip a few and do a few later, or, or do I need to do the whole thing for it to have any effect? I often say it's like, it's not a spell. It's not a magic spell that you have to do everything, exactly. And then something happens,
Yeah. It's interesting. I always feel a little bit like Ashtanga, like perpetuates our OCD tendencies, where we have to have everything in like the exact order, the exact right place. We have to do the exact right vinyasa, which maybe isn't the best. You know what? If people want to call me out for like not being traditional, at this point in my life, I don't really care so much. But I do feel like you have to adapt the practice to stage of life. And, I don't think it's good for women in their mid 40s or in their 50s, to just do primary series for like 10 years and never do any of those back bends.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're tired, it's like, what, sometimes you just can't do 2 hours of practice. Like, also, if you don't have the time in your day to do 2 hours of practice, it's unrealistic. It's like, what are the expectations? And is this yoga being used for therapeutic purposes, or is it being used for like acrobatic ego purposes? Or like, what are you trying to do with your yoga practice? Like, what's the point, right? And do you feel like it has positive effects? I always like to ask people that. Is it going to have positive effects? Do you feel like it's affecting you positively?
Do you feel like, yeah, that's a great question.
Or do you feel like it's affecting you negatively? Because if it's affecting you negatively, you need to change it, because it shouldn't be affecting you negatively.
It's so strange, isn't it? Habits, that just get so ingrained, and then it's like, if you don't do it, then it's like, well, you haven't done your day, your kind of rituals of your day properly, and you feel like something's lacking. I haven't, it's kind of like a self-affirming kind of thing, isn't it? What starts off all kind of quite innocent, and you're feeling good, and like it's going well, and then it's like then you kind of have to do it, and then it becomes this some kind of compulsion. If I don't do it, then I won't. Then I won't feel good, And I think it's really important to hear things like this and hear how. Yes, you have to ask, how it's actually making you feel. And, you just coming out and saying you're happy to do a half primary and a half intermediate, I think is really important for people to hear, for a certified teacher, a traditional, because you still teach traditional Ashtanga, you've been paid your dues in Mysore, right? And to say, look, you can, you don't have to go all the way through primary and then start adding on one by one. You can use it. They're tools, right? I mean, I think,
That's Sharat says that.
You say it's only it's yoga. It's
He'll say if you have like a back hernia, then just do intermediate series. Like you just do the beginning postures of intermediate series. And it's like, even if they've never done primary series, just start them with back bends. Like, sometimes I think we create this like fixed structure, as practitioners, as teachers, and so I don't think it's necessarily like that actually in India even. But when you think of it in a bigger context, the main students that are coming to Sharat to practice are people who want to be teachers, right? They want to be authorized, or they want to be certified. Most of them are quite young. They have a lot of energy. They don't have children, or they're like devoting their whole lives to practicing, like you and I were, right? And so you teach those people a certain way because you want them to understand the system. You want them to be perfect in the postures so that they know and have that experience and can teach others. But if you've seen him work with people who are older or middle-aged, he has a very different approach. He's so sweet, and he's so not pushing. And he's so like, he really understands like, oh, this is just like asana. This actually doesn't mean anything. And we make it mean something. But I don't think Sharat actually makes it mean anything. But, he does.
So he's not perpetuating the patriarchy.
Well, I don't think in a way he is. He's a big champion of women. I've always felt that.
I think he is. Yeah, I felt that way too. Yeah, absolutely.
He loves his mother. He has a strong relationship with her, even though they, have some things sometimes, but he was raised by his mother
Yeah,
typically,
absolutely.
like
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
single
yeah.
mother.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm,
and he has, he loves his wife. He loves his daughter.
mm,
When he first had Strata,
mm,
I remember people were like,
mm,
"Oh,
mm.
did you want a son?" He said, "No, I wanted a daughter."
Hmm,
Like he really
mm,
champions women, I feel.
mm, mm, mm.
But there is like maybe an embedded patriarchal structure to the system in the way that it's taught, just because it's our society, and like having to be perfect and having to achieve all of these sort of things in
Mm,
a
mm,
linear way, and it not being creative or flexible,
mm, mm,
for people on a certain path. But I think
mm,
if
mm.
you're a little bit older and you're practicing in Mysore, there's a little different standard and a little different way of that he
Mm,
teaches
mm,
students. And I think
mm.
as teachers, we need to be more flexible, and we need to have that
Yeah,
flexibility and look at, I think, working with students, really working with the student and
looking at
not
the
just
student.
saying,
Yeah,
yeah,
this is a
yeah,
template I'm going to put on you. Actually, looking at the person and go, well, actually, this is a
yeah,
real person in front of me who, has pains and needs and struggles, and
yeah,
what can actually make them feel good. Rather than you
yeah,
need to do, rather than they need to do yoga right. It's like, well, how can we make the yoga right for them? I mean, it's an obvious thing to say, but
totally. I love
it goes
that.
by the wayside, doesn't it? Well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. And also like how like have a conversation with people. I mean, that's the
yeah,
beauty of the
yeah.
Mysore system is you can
Well,
actually talk to people and
it's not
like,
always a male thing to do.
yeah, work with
Yeah,
them and be
yeah.
like, how is this working for you?
Try and
Right?
connect to your students. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wish
Try and
I'd
connect to them.
wish I'd
Yeah.
heard that when I was young.
And I
Um,
think like realize that it's individual, right? Like, and
mm,
I think the whole yoga practice is individual, how we go through the practice, and also that it's not linear, right? Like it's not like you always have to do all of primary before you do intermediate. And if you've been doing all of primary and you've been doing all of intermediate, you can like, stop halfway. I mean, even Sharat chops people's practice in half and has them start doing intermediate. Maybe it's
yeah,
for time purposes, but I mean, you can do these things, right?
yeah,
Once you are familiar with
yeah.
asanas and you have them in your body, you can kind of, you know, like use the practice to support your life rather than feeling like you have to sacrifice your life for
Your
the
life to
practice.
practice. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming on. It's been a great chat. It's lovely to see you again, and some really, really sage advice there. So
I
I'm
hope
sure
so.
many,
I
many.
hope
Yeah, it
people
was
feel
great.
empowered by
No,
it.
I think they will.
Good.
Thanks,
Listen to
Harmony.
yourself.
Yeah,
That's always
exactly.
the
Yeah.
thing. It's like go in and like check in, like every day, not just like
Easy to say, harder to do, but yes, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Listen to yourself.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Right.